Hey guys, welcome back to the Ice Project. Let me just have a quick sip of coffee. All right, R360, pretty interesting conversation that's been happening around the game right now. I do believe it's a genuine threat to the NRL, and the reason why is if someone like Vlandis is putting on a 10-year ban for anyone negotiating or talking from him, he's gone from talking about it as just a gimmicky cereal box game into putting a ban on him. There must be a genuine threat there. Now, when he's saying look this way, I always try to look the other way. Now, I'm someone who's always been a league fan. I grew up playing the sport, played the sport itself at a high level. And once I transitioned out, I've just always had a passion for like player-driven stuff. And when this first popped up, I didn't give it too much attention. I'd have players come through and ask about it. I didn't really have an opinion on it. I was just kind of letting it slide. But it wasn't until Vlandis popped up and he's like, 10-year ban. I was like, what? Like, what is this? I didn't know who ran it. I didn't know what it was about. And over the past 24 hours, I've just sort of been digging into it and trying to put a lens on that is not biased to rugby league, but like you look at it from a media standpoint, you look at it from a financial standpoint, you look at it from an opportunity for players standpoint, look at it from the NZRU, the All Blacks, and look at it from the NRL. And once I really took a step back, I was like, oh shit, this is pretty interesting. Now, everyone's sort of speculating about money and how much the boys can get paid. And what I actually did is just build out a calculator to see how much the players would actually get paid. So I done this yesterday and I was running through the numbers. And once I ran through the numbers and I saw it for what it was and then how it could get dragged out over 5, 10, 20, 50 years, I was like, oh shit. Like the league could be in trouble here. There was a golden period with rugby union between 2000 to 2015 where they probably thought their shit didn't stink. And I think rugby league is in that spot right now. Like we're moving with a lot of arrogance, the same arrogance rugby union had. When you move with arrogance in that 2011-15 period is you miss golden opportunities. And the golden opportunity during that time was actually social media. And the golden opportunity about social media was actually telling individual stories that were connected to a team. All Blacks have always been team first, therefore they missed the opportunity to celebrate the individuals during that time. And they did celebrate him as a legacy guy, being a part of the team, the Dan Carters, the Richie McCaws. But what they actually missed out on was the social media part of it. And you drag that out over 10 years, what actually happened is the game started to dilute, numbers start to get smaller, participation numbers start to go down, and the game's in a place where it starts to struggle. During that time, Rugby League had a golden opportunity to take over, and they really accepted social media for what it was. We used to use laid-back characters and just our natural essence as rugby league people really carried over to social media. And our game is made for TV. Like there's a guy here, they run, they meet in contact, and that fits into a screen on social media, and it transferred very well. We celebrated characters very well. We celebrated podcasts and stuff really well. So the game started to grow. Now we're at the point where we're probably at the top of our game and everything's starting to get a little bit more exciting. New broadcast deals are starting to come through. And we're at our top, but when rugby union was at the top, they had an opportunity to get clipped by what they didn't see coming. And what they didn't see coming was social media to celebrate individuals. Now, what rugby league is missing now is the financial reward to support these superstars, your Reece Walshes, your Nathan Clearys, your Kalen Pongers. Now, even though these people are getting paid very well in context to what everyone else gets paid in this country, they should be getting paid a lot more. So this was like the interesting conversation that I have with myself, and I get excited by the media part of R360 for it being a global game. There was a Netflix series called Drive to Survive, which actually blew up F1, like going down to certain events and certain times, almost become like the hottest ticket in town. And that was 80% based around storytelling the guys that were in F1, how they got to the race. And that's the opportunity that I see for R360. You get some of the biggest names in the world playing rugby union. You can actually tell really great stories around them and not even have to be a Netflix series that gets made 6 months later. Like I know the All Blacks do that with their own stand series. It doesn't come out till later. The most important thing now is speed of content. And if their media strategy is to post purely on YouTube, they're just going to blow up because the amount of opportunities that are going to come from not only revenue, brand deals, like stuff like TikTok Shop is going to be like pretty exciting for players coming through. Like if they can create the media giant attached to your Ardis Arvias, your like Marcus Smith, your DuPonts, if all these guys come to the league, this is going to be so much branding opportunities for everyone to come through. But I could go on about this forever, but I just want to show you a calculator that I built, and it's going to break down what players could be earning in certain periods. So let's just dive into my screen. All right, so based off the media stuff, I decided just to build out a calculator that could weigh up R360 offers versus an NRL contract. And we're just going to use Payne Haas for an example for here. So as we dive into this calculator, I built this out yesterday. I think gives us a very clear indication. So I'm actually not going to push this calculator live or public so anyone can use it. But it just gives players a great example of what they could potentially make, not only within this contract, but I've actually built an investment portfolio calculators that could get dragged out over 5, 10, 15, 30 years and even longer, to be honest. But we're just going to use Payne Haas's reported numbers. So let's just say he's been offered $3 million for 3 years. I built in tax things down here. So let's just say he lives in Dubai, which is going to be tax-free. And then let's just say his current contract with the Broncos is $1 million and is dragged out over 3 years. It's tax-free. He lives in Australia, therefore he's going to be taxed 45%. I built a manager fee thing in here for the boys. But I don't think it's relevant for R360, but you can build it in there if you want to see how much you're paying your manager every single year. But let's just leave that blank for now. And then I'll put in a guaranteed buffer here. So if I was negotiating these R360 contracts, I'll try and get a guaranteed buffer in there just in case the competition falls over. But let's just say you can guarantee 30% up front or 40, 50, as much as humanly possible. Now what this does is actually builds out a comparison results of your R360, which is here in the green, and then what you get taxed from, or what you get paid from playing NRL within Australia. So each year, Payne getting paid $1 million gets taxed 450% plus manager fees on top of that 70%, which is extra 70,000 per year. Therefore, his net, not including manager fees, is 550. So if he was getting paid $3 million and 550, the difference is obviously basically $2.5 million. Drag that out over 3 years, it ends up being $7.35 million that he could potentially gain or miss out on if he goes or if he stays. Now, his extra earnings is going to be $7.3 million. And what I've actually did with this is build out a part of the calculator that calculates how many games or how many years extra he'd have to play in the NRL to earn the same amount of money. So to earn the same $9 million net, the R360 offers in 3 years, Payne would have to play NRL at his current contract for the next 16.4 years. That's an extra 13.4 years that he need to be paying NRL for him to earn the same amount of money. Now what I actually did with this, I built this into an investment portfolio calculator as well. And let's just say Payne earns an extra $7.35 million for the year, and he wants to invest 20% of it, 40% of it, 60% of it, 80% of it, 100% of it. Let's just use 80 for example. If he was to invest 80% of it during his time, he could invest $5.8 million and then he could live off the 1.4 million. So over the next 3 years, he could basically living off 500K per year, which is plenty to live off, especially in a tax-free country. And then what I've actually did from this is built out really basic like index funds and cryptocurrencies. So S&P 500, Dow Jones, ASX, NZX, and then I've actually put Bitcoin in here too. So what we can do from here is the $5.8 million that he could potentially make, we can put that into 50% into S&P, 10% ASX, the rest into Bitcoin or anything along these lines. I can build this out a lot later, but I'm just going to keep it real basic for now. So let's just say 100% goes into the S&P 500, which the way I explain S&P 500 to footy boys is it's basically the 500 biggest companies in America, and like think of Tesla, think of Amazon, all these guys grouped into there. So it's kind of the average of all these companies. And the way I explain it to NRL players is NRL players will take money and invest it like it's a horse. Like I heard about this stock from my cousin's uncle's first cousin's little sister, where and that's like investing into a player you think that might make it into the NRL. So instead of putting your money into a single player or a stock, why not invest it into the NRL, which is growing or could stop growing if this happens. And that's how I explain to NRLs. So instead of you putting it into one player, you're actually putting it into all 450 NRL players, hoping the game grows. And that's what the S&P 500 is. Now, what this does, it actually builds it out into how much you'll be making over the next 5 years, into the next 10 years. So if Payne took the R360 contract and he used 80% of his capital to invest into the S&P 500, which is regarded as very safe, which compounds 10% every year on average for the last 100 years or whatever. In 5 years' time, he would be, actually this is 3 plus 5, so in 8 years' time, he would have a portfolio of $9.6 million. 10 years, so that's how long Vlandis is potentially looking to ban him. His portfolio could be worth $15 million. 15, 26, 20, 43, 25 years from now, he'd be 50 years old, still young. $71 million. 30 years from now, $117 million. And this is how you can build generational wealth. And that's where the conversation comes with legacy. Like die-hard football fans that don't understand stuff like this will be like, well, yeah, but what about your legacy? Man, if you gave me a rugby league legacy, so if you look at guys who have Hall of Famers and immortals within their game, what do they actually get from that? They get a spot on commentary, they get to sit sideline and sit in the rain and talk, they get invited to lunches once a year, they get a coat, you know. If you start to look at it like this, in 30 years' time, you can build generational wealth where your family will never have to work again. It starts to become very interesting. But let's just say 10 years. So let's say Payne plays for the next 3 years, gets his $9 million. He puts 80% of that into the S&P 500. And then we drag that out over 10 years' time. He's going to have $15 million. And during that time, he'll be 36, which is my age right now. Still young. Now, what rich people do is once they build up their nest egg, they let the interest compound on it and just gets more and more and compounds over time. And that's why Warren Buffett is so rich, because he's made great decisions within marketing, but he's put a lot of his money into the S&P 500 and he's lived till he's about 100, you know, and over time, compound interest goes like that and it gets bigger and bigger. And once it starts to go vertical, and that's how the rich just keep getting richer, because of the interest. But let's just say 10 years from now, he's got $15 million in his portfolio. And then he starts to retire. He says, I'm a little bit over football. And this is only off 3 years of income. He goes, I'm over this, I'm going to start to retire. And he wants to live off 5%, or he wants to withdraw 5% of that money every single year. He can still be making $800,000 per year. And he'll still be making, he'll still have $50 million in his portfolio. Now, when you start to look at numbers like this, and you start to go through the calculator and like, this is what I'm going to get paid from 360. This is what I'm going to get paid from NRL. Vlandis can ban me for 10 years. I don't really give a fuck. I've got $50 million in my bank account and I'm making $700K a year. Pretty crazy. So yeah, that's the calculator. Hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, if you're football boys or All Blacks or Union boys, want to reach out to me, just hit me up in my DMs, Instagram's ICE, and I can help you out with this stuff. So see you guys later.